What are you
The
doing
Apache girl
here?
shouted, "You saw it all, take responsibility." The rancher
You need to
swore,
leave
"I
this
only
land
helped you."
right now.
Dust swirled gently in the warm morning air, carrying with it the faint smell of sagebrush and earth that had baked under the sun for months. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote's howl echoed, breaking the stillness of the early day. In this quiet, lonely part of the world, every sound seemed louder than it should have been. Naya ran. Her small, bare feet kicked up clouds of dust as she hurried across the rocky ground, trying to stay ahead of the memories that threatened to catch her. She didn't dare look back. Not yet. Not until she knew she was safe. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. Her chest felt tight, but she forced herself to keep moving. Every few steps she stumbled, tripped over jagged stones, but she caught herself and continued. She could hear voices in her mind, angry, demanding voices, questioning, accusing, but she pushed them away. She only had one goal: reach the edge of the valley and find somewhere safe. Naya had grown up on the edge of the Apache lands, in a small village nestled among the mesas and canyons. She knew these lands well. Every rock formation, every path through the scrub was familiar. Yet now, in her panic, every landmark seemed distorted, every shadow suspicious. She had never run like this before, not like she was running from something, from someone, from the consequences of what she had witnessed. Her chest heaved as she rounded a bend, and then she saw it. A small ranch tucked quietly between two hills. It wasn't much, just a modest wooden house with a fenced yard, a few barns, and some grazing cattle. But to Naya it was like a sanctuary. She slowed down slightly, trying to steady her breath. Perhaps she could ask for help. Perhaps someone here would be kind enough to protect her, even for a short while. Tom Callahan, the rancher, was already outside, leaning against the fence with his hat tipped low against the sun. He had lived in this valley for longer than he cared to remember. Life here had taught him patience, caution, and respect for those who walked carefully on the land. When he noticed Naya approaching, he squinted against the sunlight, unsure what to make of the small figure running toward him. She looked so young. And yet there was something in her eyes, something fierce and urgent that warned him not to underestimate her. Tom's instincts told him to approach cautiously. He was used to strangers wandering near the ranch, but this was different. She was not just a wanderer. She was running, frightened, and possibly desperate. Naya stumbled over a loose rock and fell to her knees, clutching at the dusty ground. "Please," she gasped, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Please help me." Tom immediately stepped forward. "Hey, take it easy," he said in a calm, steady voice. "You're safe here, just breathe." Naya looked up at him, suspicion and anger mixed with exhaustion in her gaze. "You saw it," she spat, almost accusingly. "You saw it all. Don't pretend you didn't." Tom froze for a moment, unsure what she meant. He had seen her running, yes, but he had not seen anything that would have caused her such terror. I don't know what you mean," he said carefully. "I only saw you running, that's all. I'm just trying to help." Naya's eyes narrowed. "You saw it, you can't lie to me. You have to take responsibility." Tom held up his hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm not lying, I promise. I only helped because I didn't want to see anyone hurt. I don't know anything else, I swear." For a long moment, they just stared at each other. The wind moved softly through the tall grasses, rustling the leaves and carrying the distant sounds of the desert. Tom could see that Naya was exhausted, that her fear was real, and that her anger came from a place deeper than just frustration. Something had happened, something serious, and she had been caught in it. Slowly, Tom walked over to a nearby wooden bench, gesturing for her to sit. Naya hesitated but then sank to the bench, still keeping her eyes on him, still wary. He handed her a canteen of water which she grabbed with trembling hands. She drank deeply, almost greedily, as if she hadn't had water in days. "Here," Tom said gently, "take your time. You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to, just catch your breath first." Naya's body shook as she drank, the tension in her shoulders slowly easing, but her mind was still racing. She had witnessed something terrible, something that had shaken her to her core, and now she was at the mercy of someone she didn't fully trust. And yet, she needed help. She had no choice. Finally, when she could speak without choking, she said, I can't go back. Not yet. Vale, she stopped herself, biting her lip. Tom didn't press, only nodded slightly. He could feel the weight of her fear without needing details. My name is Tom, he said after a moment, keeping his voice low and steady. You don't have to tell me yours if you don't want to, but I'm here to help. Naya, she whispered almost reluctantly. My name is Naya, Tom nodded. All right, Naya, you're safe here for now. We'll figure things out step by step. The desert heat climbed higher as the morning progressed, and Tom led Naya into the small shade of the barn. The scent of hay, leather, and animals filled the air. Naya flinched slightly but soon realized she could relax, just a little. She watched Tom as he went about his work, quietly feeding the horses and checking the fences. There was a rhythm to his movements, a steadiness that made her feel, even for a moment, that she could breathe again. Despite her exhaustion, Naya's mind never stopped running. She kept thinking about what she had seen, about the people involved, and about how much responsibility fell on those who witnessed wrongdoings. She kept thinking about Tom, about whether he truly understood, or whether he could ever understand, the danger and the consequences. Tom, for his part, couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Naya's story than she was letting on. He had lived through a lot of things on the ranch, seen accidents, disputes, even small acts of violence among neighbors. But this felt different. There was a fire in her eyes that told him she had been touched by something darker than anything he had ever seen. Hours passed. The sun climbed to its peak, baking the valley in intense heat. Naya rested quietly, sipping water and watching Tom work. He never asked too many questions, only offered small gestures of comfort, more food, a clean cloth to wipe her face, a quiet word here and there. His patience was remarkable, and slowly Naya's tension began to ease. Not fully, not yet, but enough for her to consider, even briefly, that she might survive this ordeal. And yet deep inside, she knew she couldn't stay silent forever. There was a truth, a responsibility that she carried, something that could not be ignored. She glanced at Tom as he adjusted the fence post, a shadow crossing her face. Her voice came out low, almost a hiss. You really did see it, didn't you? Tom froze for a moment, then shook his head. I didn't see anything except you running. I promise, Naya, I only helped you. Her eyes narrowed again, a mixture of frustration and disbelief. You can't just pretend like it didn't happen, she said softly but firmly. One day it will come back to you, and you will have to take responsibility. Tom said nothing. He only nodded, his mind racing with questions he didn't dare ask yet. He understood one thing clearly. This girl had been through something terrible, and whether he liked it or not, he was now a part of it. The sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in warm shades of orange and pink. Naya sat quietly, her mind restless but her body finally at peace. Tom worked around the ranch, keeping an eye on her from time to time, aware that this was just the beginning of a story that neither of them fully understood yet. And in that quiet desert valley, two lives had crossed paths, one desperate, one cautious, and a journey had begun that would test courage, trust, and the meaning of responsibility in ways neither of them could imagine. The heat of the desert afternoon pressed down heavily over the valley. Naya had spent the morning resting, but her mind never stopped racing. Every memory of what she had witnessed lingered in her thoughts like a shadow she could not shake. She had tried to push it away, tried to focus on the present, but it was impossible. The incident was still fresh, and the people involved had left marks not just on the land but on her heart and mind. Tom noticed her silence. He was used to the quiet stretches of life on the ranch, but there was something different about Naya. Her eyes were alert, always scanning, as though expecting something to leap from the rocks or the shadows. She wasn't just cautious, She was wary of the world itself. Tom could sense that she had seen things she shouldn't have, things that weighed heavily on her young shoulders. After a while, he decided to speak, carefully choosing his words. "You don't have to tell me right now, Naya," he said, his voice calm, steady. "But I can see that something happened, and I want you to know that you're safe here, at least for now. No one can reach you without my knowing." Naya's gaze lingered on him, measuring him. She wanted to trust him, she really did, but trust didn't come easily, not after what she had witnessed. She thought about the faces she had seen, the shadows in the canyon, and the fear in the voices of those who had tried to hide the truth. And she thought about her responsibility. She was not just a witness. She had seen the consequences of silence. Finally, she spoke, her voice low but urgent. "It wasn't just anything, Tom. It was something serious, something that could hurt a lot of people if it's not stopped." Tom nodded, listening intently. "I understand," he said, "but I need to know it from you. Tell me in your own words what happened, only if you're ready." Naya hesitated. Memories surged, sharp and painful. She could still see the way the people had looked at her when she arrived. They hadn't expected her to be brave enough to witness what was happening. And now, standing in the quiet shade of the barn, she realized that she had no choice but to speak. Slowly, she began. "It was in the canyon, near the eastern ridge. I saw some men taking things that didn't belong to them. And when I tried to stop them, her voice broke and she swallowed hard. They didn't want to listen, and then someone got hurt." Tom's expression grew serious. He had expected danger, but hearing her words made it real. He thought about how easy it would be for such an event to go unnoticed in these remote lands, for it to be brushed aside or ignored. He also realized why Naya had been running. She wasn't just afraid for herself. She was afraid for what might happen if the truth stayed hidden. "I see," he said quietly, "and that's why you're here. You needed somewhere safe, somewhere away from all of that." Naya nodded, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. "I don't know if anyone will believe me, and even if they do, what can I do? I'm just one person." Tom shook his head. "One person can make a difference, Naya. You've already shown courage by coming here. That counts for something. A lot, actually." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind rustling through the grass and the distant cry of a hawk circling above. The quiet was comforting, but it also gave Naya time to think, to feel the weight of the responsibility she carried. She had seen too much to ignore it, but she also knew she needed guidance, someone who could help her navigate the danger without making things worse. After some time, Tom stood and walked to the fence, looking out over his land. "You know," he said, "sometimes people think that helping means jumping into the middle of things without thinking, but it doesn't. Helping can also mean listening, planning, and staying safe so you can act when the time is right. That's what we need to do here." Naya listened carefully, realizing he wasn't dismissing what she had seen. He understood that actions needed to be measured, not impulsive. For the first time since the incident, she felt a small spark of hope. Perhaps she wasn't completely alone in this. As the day stretched on, Naya explained more about what had happened. She spoke of the men, of the hidden paths they had used, and of the secret places where they tried to hide what they had taken. She described the fear in the eyes of those who were hurt, and the guilt she felt for not being able to stop it. Tom listened without interrupting, only asking questions when necessary. He began to piece together a clearer picture of what had occurred. Though he had not been present during the incident, the details she shared allowed him to understand the severity of the situation. He also realized why she had insisted he had seen it all. He hadn't witnessed the actions directly, but he had seen the aftermath, the evidence, the marks left behind, and the fear in Naya's eyes. Evening approached and the sky turned shades of pink and orange, casting long shadows across the ranch. Tom led Naya to a small wooden cabin on the property, a place where she could rest and feel safe. "You'll stay here tonight," he said. "I'll be close by and no one will bother you. Tomorrow, we'll figure out what steps to take next." Naya hesitated at the door. She wanted to trust him, but her instincts told her caution was still necessary. She finally nodded and stepped inside, closing the door behind her. The cabin was simple but warm, with a small bed, a wooden table, and a lantern that cast a soft glow across the room. She sank onto the bed, feeling the tension in her body start to ease, though her mind remained alert. As she lay there, memories continued to surface. She thought about her family, her village, and the people who had been hurt. She thought about the responsibility she now carried. And she thought about Tom, a stranger who had offered her help without demanding anything in return. There was a strange comfort in knowing that someone could be trusted, even if only slightly. Outside, Tom made his rounds, checking the fences and ensuring the animals were safe. He kept glancing toward the cabin, aware of the young girl resting inside. He understood that her story was far from over, that the danger was not gone, and that the choices made in the coming days would shape not only her future but the future of many others. Night fell over the valley, and the desert cooled. Stars appeared one by one, spreading across the sky in brilliant clusters. Naya sat by the small window, looking out at the endless expanse of desert. She felt a strange mixture of fear, hope, and determination. She had survived the immediate danger, but the path ahead was uncertain. Her thoughts turned back to Tom, who had been quiet and steady all day. He had not pressured her, had not judged her, had only offered support. For the first time since the incident, she felt that perhaps she could face what was coming. Perhaps she could find a way to do what was right without putting herself or others in unnecessary danger. Sleep came slowly, as it often does when the mind is burdened with responsibility. Naya drifted in and out of dreams, each one filled with shadows of the canyon, the faces of those involved, and the echo of her own voice shouting, demanding justice. But she also dreamt of a quiet valley, a place of safety and trust, where someone believed in her courage. When she woke, the first rays of sunlight were breaking over the horizon again. The world seemed calm, but Naya knew that calm was only temporary. The events she had witnessed would not stay hidden forever, and the decisions she and Tom would make could change everything. She stepped outside the cabin, stretching and taking a deep breath of the crisp morning air. Tom was already outside, tending to the horses. He looked up and gave her a small nod. "Good morning," he said simply. "Sleep well," Naya nodded, feeling a little stronger, a little more prepared. "Yes," she said. "Thank you." Tom gave her a reassuring smile. "We'll figure this out together," he said, "one step at a time." And in that quiet morning light, Naya realized that though the path ahead was uncertain and dangerous, she was no longer completely alone. There was someone who understood, someone who was willing to help, and perhaps together they could face the challenges ahead without losing themselves to fear or despair. The morning air was crisp as Naya stepped outside the cabin, the first rays of sunlight painting the desert in gold and amber. She felt a strange mixture of relief and unease. She had survived the immediate danger and had shared some of her story with Tom, yet a gnawing sense of urgency remained. The events she had witnessed were far from over, and every moment of silence weighed heavily on her conscience. Tom was already in the barn, brushing down one of the horses. His movements were deliberate, calm, and precise. Everything about him suggested someone who had lived with the land for decades. Yet despite his outward calm, there was an alertness in his eyes. He had begun piecing together the fragments of Naya's story, and though he didn't fully understand the scale of what had happened, he sensed the danger and the responsibility that rested between them. Naya approached slowly, careful not to startle him. "Tom," she said softly, "I need to know if someone comes looking for me, what will you do?" Tom paused, brushing the last stroke along the horse's coat. "I'll protect you as best I can," he replied, "but you have to tell me everything you know." Secrets make it harder to keep people safe. Naya's eyes flickered with hesitation. There were details she wasn't ready to share, things too dangerous, too heavy for even him to know, but she realized that keeping them hidden could make things worse. She took a deep breath. "It's not just about what I saw," she said. "It's about who will try to cover it up, and they won't stop just because I'm gone." Tom listened carefully. "Then we need a plan. We can't act recklessly, but we also can't ignore it. Do you understand that?" Naya nodded, though her stomach twisted in fear. She understood perfectly. The canyon where the incident had taken place was not far from the ranch. It was a place she had always considered dangerous, even before the events that had driven her here. Now it felt like a trap, a reminder that the people involved were still out there, still capable of harm. The day passed slowly, each hour thick with tension. Naya worked alongside Tom, helping with the animals, repairing fences and fetching water. It was a strange routine for her, normal, mundane tasks that felt almost comforting. But beneath the surface, her mind never stopped turning over every detail of the incident. Every shadow, every sound, every movement of the wind seemed to carry a hidden meaning. By midday, Tom had noticed her growing agitation. "You've been quiet for a while," he said gently. "I can tell you're thinking about something, want to talk." Naya shook her head quickly. "I can't," she said almost bitterly. "Not yet. If I talk too much, someone might use it against me or against you." Tom understood. The desert was wide, but secrets had a way of traveling fast, especially dangerous ones. "Then we'll take it slow," he said. "We don't need to rush, we just need to be careful." As the sun climbed higher, a sudden sound broke the quiet. A distant shout echoed across the valley, carried clearly on the dry air. Naya froze. Her heart leaped into her throat. She knew that voice. It wasn't friendly. It belonged to someone who would stop at nothing to keep the incident hidden. Tom noticed her reaction immediately. "Stay here," he said firmly. "I'll check it out." "No," Naya cried. "You don't understand. They'll hurt you if you go alone. You don't know what they can do." Tom turned to her, his expression calm but resolute. "And if I don't go, they might find you first. We can't wait for them to make the first move." Naya clenched her fists, frustration and fear mixing together. "I told you, you saw it all. You can't just pretend it didn't happen." "You have a responsibility." Tom's eyes softened, but his voice remained steady. "I only helped you because it was the right thing to do, Naya. That doesn't mean I'm blind to what's happening, but acting recklessly won't help anyone. We have to think, plan, and protect ourselves first." Her words had been sharp, but Tom understood their meaning. She wasn't just angry at him. She was angry at the world, at the injustice she had witnessed, at the people who had caused harm. He nodded silently, realizing that her trust in him was growing, but it came with conditions, conditions he had to respect. Hours later, the tension didn't lessen. Shadows lengthened across the ranch as the sun began to dip toward the horizon. The air grew cooler, but the feeling of being watched never left. Naya kept glancing toward the distant canyon, her mind replaying the incident over and over. She thought about the men she had seen, about the fear in their eyes when they realized someone had witnessed them, and about the danger that still lingered in the canyon. Tom, meanwhile, had been quietly gathering supplies: water, rope, a small first aid kit, and provisions. He didn't ask questions, he only prepared. Naya watched him from the cabin door, surprised at how calm he remained despite the threat. There was a strength in him she hadn't expected, a quiet courage that made her feel slightly safer. Night approached, and with it, a growing sense of urgency. Naya knew that waiting too long could be dangerous. The people involved in the incident were not likely to give up. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her again. "We can't just sit here," she whispered. Tom looked at her, reading the fire in her eyes. "I know," he said, "but rushing in blindly isn't going to help anyone. We need a plan." Naya's frustration bubbled over. "A plan? How can there be a plan when they're dangerous? When they hurt people just to protect themselves? You don't understand." Tom sighed, rubbing his face with one hand. I may not understand everything you've seen, Naya, but I do know this. We can face danger together carefully, and we can make sure no one else gets hurt." Her gaze softened slightly. She didn't trust him fully yet, but she realized that he was sincere. He wasn't pretending. He wasn't lying. And in the dangerous world she now faced, sincerity and honesty were rare treasures. The first stars began to appear in the sky, tiny points of light against the darkening desert. Naya and Tom sat in silence for a while, listening to the night sounds, the distant howl of a coyote, the rustle of leaves in the wind, the soft snort of a horse in the barn. It was a temporary calm, a momentary pause in the tension that had gripped them all day. But Naya knew that the calm wouldn't last. She felt it in her bones. The canyon, the men, the incident, they were all still out there waiting. And she knew that sooner or later action would be required. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't let them get away with this. I can't just hide and hope it ends." Tom nodded. "I understand, and we'll do it the right way, Naya. Not recklessly, not blindly, but we'll do it together." For the first time, Naya felt a small measure of hope. Perhaps they could face the danger. Perhaps they could act without losing themselves. Perhaps justice, in some form, could be served. The night deepened, and the stars shone brightly above the desert. The ranch, though quiet, felt alive with preparation and anticipation. Naya realized that her journey was far from over, but for the first time, she didn't feel completely alone. She had an ally, someone who understood even a little, and together they could face what was coming. But deep in the canyon, shadows moved. The men who had caused harm were aware that someone had witnessed their actions. They would not stop until the threat was gone. And though Naya and Tom were cautious, they would soon find that planning alone was not enough to escape the consequences of what had been seen. The desert night wrapped around them, vast and unyielding, holding both danger and possibility. Naya looked toward the horizon, feeling the weight of her responsibility and the courage that had brought her this far. She knew the coming days would test them both, testing trust, courage, and the strength to do what was right even when the path was uncertain. And in that quiet, tense night, the first real confrontation loomed, one that would challenge everything Naya and Tom believed about justice, responsibility, and each other. The night was deep, and the desert air had cooled considerably, carrying the faint smell of sage and dry earth. Naya sat by the cabin window, her arms wrapped around her knees, staring at the moonlit valley. She could hear the distant rustle of the wind through the grasses and the quiet sounds of the ranch animals settling for the night. Yet, even in this calm, her mind would not rest. The images of the canyon, the faces of the men she had seen, and the memory of the harm that had been done circled endlessly in her thoughts. Tom, meanwhile, had finished securing the ranch for the night. He had double-checked the fences, ensured the horses and cattle were safely inside, and made sure that every door and window of the cabin was locked. But he couldn't shake the sense that the danger was still very near. The moment he had heard the distant shouting earlier in the day, he had known that someone had followed Naya, or that the people involved in the incident had been tracking her. He understood the risk she carried simply by existing as a witness. After a long silence, Tom decided to approach Naya. He found her sitting in the dim glow of the cabin, her eyes tired but alert. "Naya," he said gently, "we can't keep everything inside forever. You have to tell me everything, the details, the names, everything. Only then can we figure out what to do next." Naya's eyes met his, and for a moment there was fear, anger, and hesitation all mixed together. She had carried this burden alone for so long that trusting someone else with it seemed impossible. But she also knew that keeping it hidden would not make it go away. "It's not easy," she whispered. It's dangerous, and it's my responsibility." Tom nodded. "I understand, but I'm not going to tell anyone else. I just need to know so I can help." "You don't have to be afraid of me, Naya." Her hands trembled slightly as she took a deep breath. Slowly, she began to recount the incident in full. She told him about the canyon, the hidden paths, and the men who had taken things that were not theirs. She spoke of how she had tried to intervene, how they had reacted with anger and threats, and how one of them had been hurt in the scuffle. Her voice shook at times, and tears welled in her eyes, but she continued. Each word was heavy, each sentence carrying the weight of fear, guilt, and responsibility. Tom listened quietly, occasionally nodding, never interrupting. He could feel the intensity of what she had gone through. It was worse than he had imagined. He realized that Naya's insistence that he had seen it all was not a claim that he had been present. It was the weight of responsibility she assumed he now shared by witnessing her struggle, by knowing her truth and choosing to help. When she finally fell silent, exhausted from the confession, Tom reached out and placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Naya," he said softly, "you have shown incredible courage. What you've done, it's not easy. And you've done the right thing by coming here, by telling me. But we need to think carefully about the next steps. We can't act recklessly or more people could get hurt." Naya looked at him, her eyes reflecting both relief and frustration. "I know," she said, "but it feels like doing nothing is just letting them win. I can't just sit here while they get away with it. I saw it and I have to do something." Tom nodded slowly. "I understand, and I promise you won't have to face it alone. We'll figure out a way to address this without making things worse, but we have to be smart. Planning matters as much as courage." The night grew darker, and the shadows in the cabin seemed to stretch and twist. Naya felt the weight of the canyon, the men, and the incident pressing down on her, but Tom's calm presence gave her a small measure of reassurance. She realized that for the first time since the event, she was not completely alone. Hours passed, and the desert was silent except for the occasional call of an owl or the distant howl of a coyote. Naya and Tom sat together, talking quietly about what could be done. They made lists, considered options, and weighed the risks. Naya was surprised at how methodical Tom was. His careful thinking reminded her that courage alone was not enough. Planning and strategy were equally important. As the night deepened, Tom decided it was time to prepare for potential confrontation. "We need to make sure the ranch is secure," he said. "We also need a way to communicate if someone approaches, and we need to know the paths they might use. If we understand the land as well as they do, we have an advantage." Naya agreed, and together they moved quietly around the ranch, checking every corner and discussing possible scenarios. For the first time, Naya felt a sense of purpose. The fear was still there, but it was now accompanied by determination. She realized that her responsibility did not mean carrying the burden alone. It meant acting wisely, with someone she could trust. Later, they returned to the cabin, exhausted but alert. Naya sat by the window again, thinking about her village, her family, and the people who had been hurt. She thought about the responsibility she carried, and she also thought about Tom. He had seen her struggle, he had listened, and he had not judged her. He had offered help when it mattered most. Tom sat across from her, quietly organizing the supplies they had gathered. "We'll need to be careful tomorrow," he said. "If we're going to do this, we have to be ready, and we need to watch out for each other." Naya nodded. "I trust you," she said quietly. "Even though I was angry earlier, I can see that you really want to help, and I know you're careful. That matters." The moonlight spilled into the cabin, casting long shadows across the floor. Naya felt a small sense of peace. The path ahead would be dangerous, but she was no longer carrying the weight alone. She realized that telling the truth, even a little at a time, was not a weakness, it was a strength. As the night went on, they took turns keeping watch, speaking in low tones about possible strategies and outcomes. Naya shared more details about the canyon, the hidden paths, and the men who had caused harm. Tom listened, absorbing every piece of information, noting risks and considering ways to prevent further danger. By the early hours of the morning, exhaustion finally overcame them. Naya curled up on the small bed in the cabin, her mind still buzzing with thoughts, but her heart a little lighter. Tom sat nearby, leaning against the wall, eyes open and alert. He understood that the next steps would be crucial, and that Naya's courage and knowledge, combined with his experience and preparation, were their best chance of facing what lay ahead. As dawn began to break, painting the desert in soft hues of pink and orange, Naya realized something important. The responsibility she carried was not hers alone anymore. By sharing it, by trusting Tom, she had found a partner in facing the danger. And though the path ahead was uncertain, she no longer felt paralyzed by fear. The first rays of sunlight illuminated the valley, the ranch, and the distant canyon. Naya and Tom stood side by side, silently acknowledging the truth. They had been through much, and what they had seen would not be ignored. The revelation had brought clarity and with it a plan. They would confront the consequences not recklessly, but carefully, with courage and wisdom. The desert stretched endlessly before them, holding secrets, dangers, and possibilities. Naya took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility and the strength of trust. She knew that the coming days would test them both, testing their courage, their judgment, and their ability to act rightly under pressure. But for the first time, she felt ready. And in that quiet dawn, with the desert waking around them, the moment of reckoning approached. Naya and Tom had seen the truth. They understood the stakes. And together, they would face the consequences, prepared to act to protect, and to ensure that justice, in some form, would be served. The sun rose slowly over the desert valley, painting the rocks and sand in warm shades of gold. The quiet morning felt almost peaceful, but both Naya and Tom knew the calm was fragile. The men from the canyon were still out there, and the events that had set this all in motion had not been forgotten. Today, they would have to face the consequences of what Naya had seen, and there was no turning back. Naya stepped outside the cabin, her heart pounding. She could feel the weight of the responsibility she had carried for days. The fear that had chased her across the desert, the memories of what she had witnessed, and the sense of duty she could not ignore were all pressing down on her. But there was also a new feeling, confidence, tempered with caution. She had told the truth, she had prepared, and she had Tom by her side. Tom was already outside, moving quietly toward the barn. He glanced at her and gave a small nod. "Ready?" he asked. Naya took a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied. They moved together toward the edge of the ranch that faced the canyon. Every step was careful, deliberate, as they scanned the land for signs of movement. The desert was quiet, almost eerily so, but they both knew that the silence was dangerous. It could mean the men were hiding, waiting, or planning their next move. As they neared the canyon, Naya began to recount again what she had seen. The paths the men had used, the places where they had hidden things, and the times they had threatened her. Tom listened closely, nodding, memorizing the terrain and making mental notes of potential risks. They were planning not just to confront the danger, but to do it safely and effectively. Suddenly, a movement caught Naya's eye. One of the men from the canyon emerged from behind a rock formation, scanning the valley. Naya froze, her stomach twisting with fear. Tom immediately stepped in front of her, his hand gently but firmly resting on her shoulder. "Stay calm," he whispered. "We'll handle this." The man paused as if sensing something unusual. Then he shouted toward them, his voice harsh and demanding. "You, stop right there." Tom's eyes narrowed. He could see that this was a man driven by fear and anger, someone who would act rashly if provoked. He didn't want violence, but he understood that they couldn't let the man threaten Naya or themselves. "Show your hands," Tom called out calmly but firmly. "We don't want trouble, but we won't let anyone hurt us or anyone else." Naya gripped Tom's arm tightly, but she did not back away. She knew now that standing strong was part of her responsibility. The man hesitated, sizing them up, then took a step closer, his expression dark. Tom didn't flinch. "We know what happened in the canyon," he said, his voice steady. "You've made mistakes and people have been hurt, but there's still a chance to make this right. Don't force it to get worse." The man's face twisted in anger and frustration. He glanced toward the rocks behind him, clearly considering retreat or attack. Naya could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. Every instinct screamed for caution, but she also felt a strange strength inside her, the courage she had found through telling the truth and planning with Tom. Suddenly, another figure emerged from the canyon, a second man, moving quickly but carefully. Tom could see that things were escalating. He subtly shifted to put himself between Naya and the approaching men. "Naya, stay behind me," he said. "We need to stay calm and think clearly." The men stopped a short distance away, still shouting, still threatening, but now they were clearly unsure. Tom took a deep breath, then spoke in a firm, commanding tone. "Listen, we can solve this without violence. We know what you did and you know we know. But it's not too late. You can take responsibility and prevent this from getting worse." Naya watched as the men exchanged glances, confusion and anger battling on their faces. She realized that Tom was right. Fear and anger could be redirected. Reason could prevail. She stepped forward slightly, her voice firm but not threatening. "I saw everything," she said, "and I won't lie, but you can still do the right thing." Her words seemed to have an effect. The first man's shoulders slumped slightly, and the second man lowered his hands, unsure of what to do next. Tom seized the moment to continue calmly. "We can make this right without anyone getting hurt, but only if you stop running from what you've done." There was a long, tense pause. Then the first man spoke, his voice low and grudging. We didn't mean for anyone to get hurt. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." Naya nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. "I know, but you can't ignore it now. You have to take responsibility." The second man stepped forward cautiously. "Okay," he said. We'll cooperate. We'll fix what we can." Tom kept his hand on Naya's shoulder, giving her a reassuring squeeze. "Good," he said quietly. "That's the right choice." Over the next few hours, Naya and Tom guided the men as they worked to make amends. They retrieved what had been taken, repaired damages where possible, and ensured that anyone who had been harmed received help. It wasn't perfect, and it wouldn't undo everything, but it was a step toward justice. As the day turned to evening, the desert valley seemed to exhale. The tension that had gripped the land all morning began to lift. Naya felt a sense of relief she hadn't known she could feel. The fear that had haunted her was still there, a quiet reminder of the danger she had faced, but it no longer controlled her. Tom looked at her, a small smile breaking across his face. "You were brave today," he said, "more than you know, and you didn't face it alone." Naya returned the smile, though it was tired. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said. You helped me find the courage to do what was right." The sun set over the desert, casting long shadows and painting the sky in vibrant reds and oranges. Naya and Tom stood together, looking out over the canyon, reflecting on the events of the day. They had faced danger, uncertainty, and moral challenges, and they had come through stronger. Naya realized that the responsibility she had feared for so long was not just a burden, it was also a source of strength. By standing up, speaking the truth, and acting with courage, she had changed the course of events and had made a difference. And she had learned that trust and partnership could make even the heaviest responsibilities manageable. Tom, for his part, understood the depth of Naya's courage and the importance of supporting those who had the strength to act. He had been reminded that helping someone was not just about protecting them from immediate danger. It was about empowering them to face their own challenges, to find their own courage, and to act wisely. The desert night fell, and the stars began to shine in the clear sky. Naya felt a quiet peace settle over her, a rare moment of calm after the storm. She knew that the events of the canyon would remain a part of her life, but she also knew that she had the strength to face what came next. Tom and Naya returned to the ranch, ensuring everything was secure for the night. As they walked together, Naya looked at him and said softly, I understand now. Responsibility isn't just about facing danger. It's about facing it with courage and with someone you trust." Tom nodded, his expression serious but gentle. "Exactly," he said, "and you've learned that well." They stood together outside the cabin, watching the stars glimmer above the desert. The events that had begun with fear and uncertainty had ended with courage, understanding, and the beginnings of justice. And though the future was still unknown, Naya felt ready to face it, strengthened by the lessons she had learned and the ally she had gained. In the quiet of the desert night, two people who had been thrown together by circumstance stood side by side, no longer defined by fear, but by courage, trust, and the resolve to do what was right. And in that moment, the valley seemed at peace, as if the land itself recognized the strength and bravery that had been shown. Naya realized that life would always have challenges, that danger could return, and that responsibility would never fully leave her. But she also understood that courage, planning, and trust could carry her through even the darkest moments. She was no longer just a witness. She was an actor in her own story, ready to face the future with determination and hope. And as the desert night stretched endlessly above, Naya and Tom stood together, knowing that while the canyon had tested them, it had also taught them lessons they would carry for the rest of their lives.